We're going to have another case study now in the retail service sector, showcasing training delivery including in-house training from Gloria Jeans, the Indian franchise, and First Impressions. Tony White and Mike Wallace, I'm delighted to say, will be speaking to us now. And I'm going to invite Tony to address us first. He's General Manager International for Gloria Jeans, and he looks after 35 international markets, covering Europe, Asia, India, Middle East and Africa. His role is to develop market entry strategies, to recruit master franchise partners and oversee brand growth across all those markets. He's lived and worked in India for the last 10 years, so I think we'll have a great deal to contribute to exactly some of these issues that Dilip was flagging. Mike Wallace, hold your applause. Mike Wallace is CEO of First Impressions Resources, the Australian Retail College, and it's a very interesting story, his own story. He came from the UK in 2003, studied for his MBA at Griffith University, graduated in 2005, joined an international college in Brisbane as deputy principal, developing and managing courses, and has now made this extra step, appointed to the chief executive officer in January this year for First Impressions Resources, very much involved in developing FIR's educational program. So a very nice range, I think, of skills and observations here from these two gentlemen. Please welcome them.
Thanks, Geraldine, for the welcome, and thank you also for the organising committee for inviting us to share with you a little bit of our journey in India over the last 4 years in particular, since we've been operating there. Firstly, who loves coffee? Okay, keep your hands up. Who's heard of Gloria Jeans? Okay, great. We're really an iconic brand here in Australia, and we're just getting started in India. What I want to do today is actually break it up into two parts. Talk about a little bit about our experience of Gloria Jeans, and secondly, take my Gloria Jeans hat off and talk about a little bit about my experience and what I see are the needs in the vocational training sector as it applies to our industry. A little bit about our brand. I don't know whether you know this, but Gloria Jeans Coffees is one of the great success stories for exporting brands out of Australia. We're in 40 countries. We bought the brand in 2005. We're 100% Australian owned and operated. And in 2005, we had 10 countries, and now we're in 40 countries. And over the next 6 months, we've got partners and are launching in Oman, Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, and Azerbaijan. So we're on the move. And one of the things that's very interesting to me as I go around and recruit partners and talk to people is that they say, you know, Tony, our market is quite different from Australia. So you're going to have to make lots of changes to be able to develop your brand in our country. And on most accounts, that's sort of true. But in many cases it's not. We can actually transfer our brand very easily into another market. But when it comes to India, let me tell you, it is true. We've had to radically change our brand model, our business model for India. To give you an indication, and think about this, our regular cappuccino in Australia sells for $4.25. In India, a regular cappuccino, the same product, sells for $1.75. Now, to be able to do that, to actually create a business model that works, we had to unpack everything about our business, then pull it back together again to be able to make a success out of the Indian market. And the reason that we're doing that is because it's a potential 500, 600, 700 store market for us, so it's actually worth it, and we're actually making progress on that. I wanted to do is, firstly, is to take you through a few of the challenges we face in India, and challenges as they relate to our Australian experience compared to our Indian experience. Firstly, we operate through a master franchise model, and that is that we provide the brand and the systems, tools and processes, the marketing, the know-how, and our partners provide the investment and the operational oversight in the market. So we've got 40 of those partners spread across the world. We don't actually have ownership in any of these markets. In India, our master franchise partner is the Mickey Jagtiani-led Landmark Group, so we've got a great partner. We've got 25 stores at the moment. We're in most of the major metro cities, and we've got pretty aggressive plans to go to 400 stores in the next 7 years. Some of the challenges we face. Firstly, there's a huge customer staff class gap that we are confronted with. To give you an idea of the Indian market, when I went through and did the market entry strategy for India, You know, a lot of people talk about these numbers of 1.2 billion, if I can only just get a small percentage of it. It's a myth. When we worked out our brand model and segmented our target market, we determined that 2/3 of India is rural that won't drink our products. That knocked out 2/3 of the market. We also recognised that our main market was going to be in the major metro cities, and we then drilled down further to say that people that could afford a cup of coffee from our stores was typically SEC A category people, and it dropped it down to somewhere between 35 to 40 million people. So a little over 3% is our target market for the Indian market. So 3% of the market can come in and afford on a regular basis to actually buy a $1.75 cappuccino on a regular basis. The people who are serving them are not people who go out and buy regular cappuccinos. So the people who are serving them don't understand what the experience is to actually go into a store and buy a coffee, right? So you've got this big disconnect about how do I train people who have never experienced it in the first place? And that's a big challenge that we've had to confront. Secondly, the business model. In Australia, our model is primarily franchisee. And you've got a franchisee, he's typically in Australia has got his house on the line, he's got some equity, he's gone to the bank and he's actually raised some money. And he's in there. He's opened the store in the morning, he's cleaning it, he's banking the money, he's locking it up in the evening, because if he doesn't do it, he's potentially going to lose his investment. Whereas our model in India is primarily company-owned stores, and this is typically a lot of the people in retail are going down the track of company-owned stores. But the problem is that you don't have a vested interest of someone who has their investment on the line. You've got store managers, not business owners. Changes the model quite significantly. In Australia, a lot of our staff in our stores are people who are just looking for a job, typically to actually either work their way through uni or as a stepping stone to something else, whereas a lot of the people in India that we're employing are actually looking for a career in food and beverage. Big difference. So we need to actually provide learning and development pathways for them. The educational learning styles is quite different, and I know that you people from India will know this. My wife and I run an NGO, and we've got an actual school in Dehradun, so I know what it's like to actually operate. We went to a conference about a month back, and someone made a great point of this whole chalk and talk strategy of Indian education, and he said, you know, it's a funny thing, that if we transported someone from lived 100 years ago in India and brought them into 2012, they'd be absolutely amazed at the technological breakthroughs that we've had of technology and how the culture has changed and people have grown. The one thing that they won't see any change in is the education system. It's still the same. It's still a chalk and talk. And so our model in India has had, our management style and our training style has had to change to be able to accommodate that. So rather than being participatory, it's much more instructive. One of the things that's really core principle in our business is the ability to develop what we call an emotional connection with our guests. If you've got a choice of going to 5 or 6 different coffee houses, the one you're going to go back to is someone who, one, knows your name, knows what you drink, and knows a little bit about you. And in Australia, we find it quite easily. We've got a motto in our brand that says we hire for personality and train for skill, because it's impossible to do it the other way around. So let's find outgoing, friendly people, and let's show them how to make a cup of coffee. Let's show them that they will automatically develop friends with people who will continue to come back because they love that connection. But the problem is the first one. If you've got a huge gap between the people who can afford a cup of coffee and the people who are serving it, it's difficult to make that connection. So we've had a lot of challenges in how do we develop a model that ensures that we deliver emotional connection in the Indian market. Retention of trained staff is another big challenge that we've got. You will know that you train up someone and for an extra 500 rupees they've gone to someone else. So this continual rotating door of staff is a challenge. And the last one I'd say is our big challenge is theft. It's a problem in most markets, but in India it's a big problem for us. And anyone that thinks that a less than class 10 person is not creative and innovative should come and have a look at some of our experiences of how they've developed innovative ways to steal money. And so it's a big issue for us. I mean, we even heard just before I left of one of our competitors was telling me that they manage inventory control and theft by the number of paper cups that they serve. So they count the cups at the start of the day, they count the cups at the end of the day, and then they work out whether there's been any theft. Except that they found out that one store was taking the empty cups and washing them and reserving them again. So you've got to be really clever. So we've had a new approach to training. We in Australia have got this thing we call a coffee university, which is a mock store that's set up inside our headquarters. And when we launched in India, we realised that we have to have a commitment to training. So it was the first coffee university we've set up outside of Australia. We opened in India, which is a mock store inside our partners' headquarters. We usually give three weeks opening support. With India, we go 3 months opening support because we recognise the importance of getting it right. We had to adapt the training content delivery. Most of our training content is online, but as most of the people who were our employees didn't have access to internet. So it's a mix of online and offline training modules. We've had to have a commitment to ongoing training. It's not a once and then. In Australia we have a franchise partner. We train them up over 5 weeks. They go back and then they train their people and we continue to train one franchise partner. He trains his staff. In India we have to train every staff on a regular basis. So we do that through area training managers. As I said, we're in most of the metro cities, and every city has its own training manager, and every region within that city has its own area training manager that does nothing else but go around to stores every day implementing training. And we've implemented a learning and development pathway for our staff to make sure that we retain staff. And we've also incentivised them based on performance, which is one of the great things that we've done. By incentivising them based on performance, we've reduced the number of pilferage in our stores, and we've also given them a lot more incentive to get going. So I've got 2 minutes left. Let me take off my Gloria Jeans hat and tell you a little bit of a few constraints to growth. And by the way, I also sit on the board of one of the ITIs that was talked about before, the Siri Ford ITI, and I'm also on the board of Franchise India, one of India's largest franchise solutions company. So I get a little bit more insight than Gloria Jeans. And what I'd say is the biggest issue facing the growth of retail and service-based industries in India is not a lack of opportunities. One of the things I'm blown away by consistently is the entrepreneurial spirit of Indians. It runs through your veins. It pumps through your veins. So there's no shortage of opportunities, from the chaiwala right through the Ambanis and in between. Entrepreneurship. Second thing is, it's not the FDI flip-flops on retail. We all know how that works. You go forward, you go back a little bit, then you go forward. So it's not that. It's not the poor supply chain infrastructure. If you're a retailer going into India, it's a consideration. There's a very poor supply chain infrastructure, nor is it the availability of willing investors. I sit on that board of Franchise India. Would you believe we have over 200,000 people registered looking for a business opportunity? And interestingly, 1/3 of the franchising industry in India is education-based opportunities. It's huge. The real challenge and constraint in growing Indian retail is the lack of skilled and trained people. That's the big one. As I talk to retailers, it's none of those things. It's how do I get trained people? Quickly, Dilip showed this slide up before. The fifth one down is organised retail. 17.6 million people required by 2022, 300,000 at present. That's 17.3 million people in retail alone. Think about it. 17.3 million people required in retail. If you broke that down into every year, that's 1.7 million people need to be trained. That's notwithstanding the attrition rate of people that need to continue to be trained. I won't go on that. So retail training in India, these are my observations, is that VET sector needs to link job seekers with industry partners, and it needs to be linked to a job. So how do I get that bottom end of the pyramid linked up to a job through industry partners? Secondly, any brand that wants to enter India needs to have a serious commitment to upfront and ongoing training. If you don't have that, then I can tell you it's a pretty good chance you're not going to make it, because we've seen the history of people that haven't made it. And the third thing I would say is that I believe that Australian training institutions in India need to export their IP. We've got amazing VET sector here. The systems, tools and processes, the curriculum content, the assessment is phenomenal. It's exactly what the Indian VET sector needs right now. And lastly, I would say don't sacrifice quality for quantity. We all know, those of us who've operated in India, how many people have MBAs, certificates. But when you actually get them into the workforce, there's not much substance to that MBA. And one of the things of Australian VET providers can provide is that quality and to keep the bar high. Because I tell you what will happen, over time there will be a temptation to lower it and continue to lower it and lower it. My suggestion and recommendation is to keep the bar very high. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Thanks again for the invitation to speak today. Having heard the numbers from Dilip and from Tony, there's no surprise to you that we're interested in the retail training space in India. But let me introduce a few things first. So First Impressions Resources, the Australian Retail College, has been established for 24 years here in Australia. And for all of that time, and we continue today to specialise in education and training for the retail industry. The training programs that we run, from the accredited programs, run from Certificate 2 through to diploma level programs, and we have articulation agreements with universities here in Australia. Our journey, and this really is a story of our journey through India over the last 4 years, was really when we looked at our international strategy, and we're not CRICOS registered, we've never had an international student on our campus here in Australia. It was really more about how we felt we might be able to add some value to the growth in the organised retail sector in India, rather than bringing students here to Australia. And clearly the model that would suit us would much more be an offshore model rather than an onshore model. So this journey of ours, which will continue for many years to come, started 4 years ago. And the Global Skills Summit, which was held in New Delhi in 2008, was featured on 6 or 7 particular skills areas, and one of those being in retail. And in fact, AEI was a co-sponsor of that conference back in 2008 in Delhi. What we found, however, when attending the conference was a real sparsity of Australians who were actually there or presenting. And when we came back from that conference, we were probably a little bit concerned about there may be a missed opportunity here, particularly as most of the people that were there were from Germany. I'm from England. We don't like losing to Germany, although we're pretty good at it. So when we got back, we had a number of meetings with Jura and with Service Skills Australia, because we felt there was a real opportunity here to develop some model of engagement between the Australian, and obviously in our particular interest, the retail side with India, and not to lose any momentum or advantage gained by that AEI investment in that conference. And I think that's really what we had an eye to. The Australian Retail College has long been a business name of First Impressions Resources, but just to give you an idea, why aren't we called the Australian Retail College in Australia, or not known as that name? And that's really because our business model changed over the years to respond to the industry here, and is no longer really an institutional based model, but 85% of our training is a workplace based training model. So the Australian Retail College as a name and a brand in India didn't necessarily convey to the retail industry, in Australia, didn't really convey to our retail industry the service that we actually offered, and we were much more responsive. However, the Australian Retail College really says what we do when we put it into the Indian context. So we went back to India again, and what we felt we needed to do was really to get a better understanding of the market and the retail industry and what the needs of that industry are in India. That's how we operate. That is our business model here in Australia, delivering solutions for the industry. So that's what we did, and we met with a number of the leading retailers, such as Reliance Landmark and others, Future Group, who were really giving of their time, and some of their highest people in their HR roles were really happy to speak to us and to talk to us about the challenges that the retail industry was facing in terms of its people development. And out of that, the way that we did that really was we took a bit of a questionnaire with us, which was really mapped against the Australian retail package. So as we went through and looked at the areas of challenge, the sort of skills that were needed to be developed, we were able to come up with a bit of a blueprint, if you like, of what that looked like compared to the Australian retail training package. Out of that, we issued a report called Growing a Retail Workforce, and that we distributed clearly to those who had participated in that research work, also to Australian government and to Service Schools Australia and other interested parties and stakeholders, really to try to raise the profile of that and to illustrate the opportunities that we felt existed for the Australian sector. 2010, we were very fortunate to be invited by DUA to a tour of an incoming Indian delegation that went from Canberra, Melbourne and Sydney. So we went to Sydney and met with that delegation, and we took them, much like the Indian delegates here today. We'll be seeing some institutes and so on tomorrow. But given that 85% of our work is training in the retail industry, we took this, unfortunately, very tired delegation on foot around some stores and the new shopping malls in Sydney to show them the retail sector and to meet with some of our clients actually in the store to show them how we actually do the training in the store, and for them to speak to those retailers to see how did they engage with us and how did they engage with training and how did they embed training within their career development strategies. We were invited to present at the FICCI Summit in Delhi in 2010, where we made presentation. And over all of this time, we've been developing connections and developing relationships. And that's what I would say is critical to your move into India, and for our Indian delegates here, is developing those relationships. So last year, one of those relationships came to fruition, and at the the Asia Pacific Cities Summit that was held in Brisbane, our partner came from Hyderabad to Brisbane, and we were very fortunate that the Mayor of Hyderabad was also in that delegation, and we had an MOU signing, which was witnessed by the Mayor of Hyderabad and the Mayors of Brisbane and Ipswich. Fortuitously again, we say fortuitous, maybe it was auspicious, that we are also sister cities. Brisbane and Hyderabad and Ipswich are sister cities. And the agreement was nothing to do with Certificate 2 in retail, it was nothing to do with a diploma. In fact, it's not even vocational education and training. The agreement is around postgraduate and graduate qualifications. The reason that's come about is actually because when we met with the retailers, the biggest issue we found, as Tony alluded to, was in the management level, they were recruiting MBAs who were just not prepared, knew nothing about retail and weren't prepared to start work in a retail business. And that's why so many MBAs are serving customers on a shop floor or even stacking shelves. There's a real mismatch between the graduate outcomes and the expectations of industry. And the capability that we felt we could bring and the value that we felt we could add to this relationship with Great India was our engagement with industry and our history of engagement with industry in India in identifying what the needs of the industry were, and secondly in developing or helping to develop those programs to create those graduate outcomes. And that's really our role in this partnership is in those areas. So we have two positions, formal positions in the business of Great India. One is in their steering committee, which is engaging with industry, and the other is I'm on their academic board, which is developing the programs to meet those needs. So don't constrict your thinking necessarily to your Australia-based model when you're looking to engage in India. I think both parties need to think more about the capabilities that they have and the value that they can bring to a relationship to add value to each other's expertise. So I returned from Hyderabad from my latest trip yesterday afternoon, so I'm a little bit weary. I got an 11 o'clock flight at night and didn't get a lot of sleep. But it was a very exciting trip, and for those who have signed your MOUs today, I hope you have as great a success as we've had in so far as we know all about the MOUs that sit on shelves and don't actually come to anything. Well, I'm very pleased to say that this particular MOU has, and that the campus was inaugurated on the 6th of July, and here are some pictures hot off the press of the inauguration and of the new campus. This is the first purpose-built retail college and the first B school that specialises only in retail management. It includes residential facilities, sports facilities, dining halls, and there's a purpose-built mock store in the campus so that those students can practice and learn on the job. And the programs include internships and guaranteed work placements at the end, with the participation of the retail industry in India. So, and whilst there's a few finishing touches, this is India, this is finished, but a few finishing touches will happen before the program's finish in September. It's, I think you'll agree, is going to be a fantastic facility, even by Australian standards, to be training those retail management students. So, our short-term future, I guess, is, well, this was a short-term future. This was the slide before we went to there. So we're continuing to explore other opportunities. And in this particular trip, I've met with some fantastic potential partners. Can I just give a great thanks to Austrade. Tom, your team are fantastic out there. Wendy in Mumbai introduced us to some new faces, and there's some great opportunities that I'm hoping to come out of there. And Ramki in Hyderabad also has made introductions for us. And for anybody who's sort of venturing on that road, if you're going to India, make sure you tell Austrade where you're going and get them on board, because they're fantastic assistants, as will be your state representatives at trade commissioners and so on at a state level. Certainly in Queensland, Rod Solomons and Priti DeRosa based in Bangalore have been, again, fantastic in helping us along the way. So we'll continue to look at opportunities in the vocational space, which we think we've now got some. We think we've finally managed to have got our head around a business model for a scalable model which can take on a higher level of trainees, and probably I'll be trying to catch up with Dilip at some time today to talk to him about that. But also things like exchange programs, and this particular campus will become a research-based campus over the next couple of years, and we're hoping it's going to lead the way in terms of the research for the retail industry in India. So we have some big goals, but we've started fairly small. What have we learned? Take the long view. Most of the things that you have heard already. It's been 4 years for us before we've actually started to get something going. Someone told me a couple of years ago it'll be 4 years. They were right. I think a lot of things I've heard today have been about 4 years as well. You've got to take a long-term view. Don't expect any quick returns. Develop relationships. There'll be many opportunities. Be pretty clear in your minds about what it is you want to do, and find partners who share common values and a common vision. This is a long journey. It needs to be sustainable. This isn't a quick relationship. And enjoy it. I love going to India. It's been 4 years that I've just enjoyed all along, and I will continue to enjoy into the future. So good luck with your journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just while you're walking back there, those graduates, those postgraduates that you said you worked with, how did that turn out? Like, do you want to just very quickly just tell us how they went? I just thought that was a very interesting story.
Which,
the postgraduates that you met who'd done the MBAs and who just found out they had no idea how to be on the floor because you've been...
Oh, yeah. Well, some of them are now back. So the partner that we're working with now has a franchise of the Indian Retail School in Bangalore and Hyderabad, and they were retraining MBA graduates to actually train them in retail.
Right.
A lot of the graduates that we met were working on a shop floor and really said to us, this isn't the job we thought we'd get when we got an MBA.
Quite.
So it's really developing a program that's going to meet the needs of both the industry and the learners. I mean, the learner's expectation isn't, when they get a qualification, isn't necessarily that they're going to get into that position. So
good. All right. Thank you very much. I thought that was just a very interesting story and terrific presentations from Tony and Mike Wallace. And I repeat that all of the PowerPoints will be on that website, www.australiaindiaeducation.com, if you want to just peruse them at your leisure.